Good. Yeah?
Rolling.
Am I good?
Yep.
Rolling.
Rolling?
Lower for a second, Eric, lower for 1 second. Yeah, just for that. Look at me, Dror.
Nachman Project Dror interview, scene 1, take 1 mark.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, everybody good? Everybody settled?
Yes.
Okay, ready? You're gonna look at me, and again, this is gonna be very, very casual.
Natural. Got it.
I might go back, I might revisit questions, and also understand that you can repeat answers. I'm gonna stop you if you say things like, as I said before, because there's no as I said before, things like that. But you can just repeat something if
Sure.
it comes up.
Sure.
I want you to start by, if I asked you to describe your dad, what kind of person is he? Characteristics, the stranger who doesn't know him, talk to me about him in a general sense, in a sentence or two. What would you say about him?
I would say he's very affable, very easygoing.
Try to look at me.
Yeah, that's the problem for me. I always, because I
I'll
space
come
out.
on, do it.
You were going to remind me a lot. So he makes some. My father, he's very easygoing, very comfortable, very easy to talk to, and makes you feel very at ease. That's how a stranger, I think, would describe my father meeting him for the first time.
Tell me a little bit about his immediate family. His how many siblings, his parents. Tell me where he grew up. In a couple of sentences, a little bit about his childhood.
So my dad was born in 1943, and he was born in Palestine, not yet Israel. And my grandparents they were Zionists, so they wanted to live in Palestine. So my father will have to verify this, but I think my grandfather heard Jabotinsky once speak, and that ignited his passion to be a Zionist, and they moved to Palestine. And my dad was born there before the state was set up or declared. And
Read that sentence again. My dad was born there before the state was declared, or before Israel was declared a state.
My dad was born there before Israel was declared a state, and I guess he's original Palestinian, and he had one older sister, and he has 2 younger sisters, so he's one of 4.
Say that one more time, because he has. I don't want you to
Okay,
say
right.
has.
So my dad has one older sister and 2 younger sisters, and they were all born in Israel. That's it.
Good.
Can we get my dad was born in 1940?
Yeah. Give me just my dad was born in 1943.
My dad was born in 1943.
One more time. Look at
My
me.
dad was born.
Wait till I'm done. Always wait till I'm done. Give it a second.
Understood.
Okay.
My dad was born February 16th, 1943, in Palestine.
Good. What do you know about your grandparents? You know what they did for a living, what your grandfather did for a living? Just very briefly.
So my
Do it
grandfather.
again without the sub.
My
I'm
grandfather.
sorry. I'm not
Do it.
trying
No,
to-
it's cool. It's cool. My grandfather was basically they literally came off the boat to Palestine, so he did all kind of jobs. He was a salesman.
Do it one more time. Great. What's your grandfather's name?
Pinchas Rosenfeld.
So I want you to say my grandfather, Pinchas Rosenfeld.
My
And
grandfather-
then just continue. Wait for me. Okay.
So my grandparents
One more
came.
time, without the sub.
My grandparents came off the boat, and my grandfather, Pinchas Rosenfeld, he basically took all kinds of jobs that he could get. He was a salesman. He sold eggs. I think before the refrigerator came out, he actually sold salt for like preserving food and stuff, and I think he did pretty well doing that. And basically, he was a salesman, doing all kind of jobs that whatever he could do to support a family. My grandmother, Sarah Rosenfeld, was a school teacher, I believe, and she was a beautiful woman. And this is what my father would say, one of my aunts, I guess, would tell me that all the little kids would follow my grandmother home because she was so pretty and they all loved her and everything. So that was kind of nice, I guess.
Can you make that one more time? Just that story. Like my aunts would say that was a kid.
My aunts would tell.
Wait a
Sorry.
second. Look at me, and when you're ready, go ahead.
My aunts would tell me about my grandmother, who was a school teacher, how everybody loved her and she was so beautiful that all the little children would follow her home after school and just to be with her because she was so warm, friendly, and loving. So that was a nice little anecdote about my grandmother.
Did you know your grandparents?
Sure, I knew my grandparents.
Tell me what you remember about them as people. And you can talk in
Right,
as
right. So my grandparents.
Wait. I want to make sure everything's clean.
Got it.
You shy?
Yes.
I just think that's his medicine. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
You want to cut for a second?
Yeah, I just have to get
Go ahead.
his medicine. It's in the kitchen. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I think he was sleeping though. So
So he's not sipping.
We're gonna cut.
Yeah.
Okay. We are rolling.
Rolling.
You good?
Yep.
Nachman Project Dror interview, scene 1, take 2, Mark.
Thank you.
I'm out here, right, guys?
Yeah.
Oh,
you're good. He's good, right? Okay.
you're asking about grandparents.
Yeah. Tell me about your
All right.
what you know of
Both of
about your
them.
grandparents
Both of them.
as, you know, as
So I was lucky enough to know both of my grandparents. They would come. They lived in Israel when we were in America, but they would come for long period of time. They would come for the summers and they would stay by us, and then they would go to. I have two aunts who live in Toronto, so they would spend 1 month in Toronto and 1 month down by us for the Chagim usually. And it was great because I really developed a relationship with both of them. My grandfather, I knew him already when he started coming to us. Both of them were retired, so they would spend a lot of time with us. My grandmother passed away when I was in high school, and my grandfather passed away after I was married with child. So,
if I asked you a very general question that said, how would you describe how your grandparents raised your father? Is there anything that comes to mind
sure,
about his upbringing?
sure. So my father was
I want you to not start with
right. Okay. Well, I'm answering your question, right?
Just say
Right,
your
right. My father was always, he was a very smart boy, my dad. He was a very good student, very smart. So I guess he was always treated as like the gifted, not gift, whatever the word you want to use is gifted, smart, special, golden, whatever it was. This is from what I was told from his aunts and everything. So he was always a student that they always wanted to put to the better schools or the better institutions, whatever. I believe somebody suggested to my grandparents that he belonged in a yeshiva, I guess because that was a better, higher process or learning, higher school of learning, shall we say, whatever it's called. So they felt that he would do better there. And so that's where he was sent. So he was always treated to, offer him the best benefits that would, help him throughout to succeed the levels that he was, that his potential could attain. And he started off in Midrashiyah, and he did very well there. And then he went on to a career in medicine, where it was very competitive, and very few people were accepted. But my dad supposedly got in without any issues, and I think there was like 1 out of 1,000 were accepted at that time because there was only one med school at the time, and he got in, no problems, and his career basically took off from that. So if you ask me, was he treated? He was treated very well growing up, but he was also, they didn't grow up very wealthy. They all shared a room. My grandmother would tell me how they all 4 kids shared one room growing up. Whether that's true or not, you'll have to ask my father. But they grew up with a sense of humility and a sense of understanding, and they grew up. My grandmother was a very warm lady, and she always imbibed a sense of closeness and family. And I believe that definitely nurtured the family and kept them cohesive and close.
Good. Talk about Do you know more about the choosing of schools before medical school? Do you know more about that choice of Midrashia and things like that? You don't
Well,
have to, I just wanna know if you do.
I can tell you that I know that my grandparents rather, did not grow up in a very orthodox environment.
Say that again.
So
I know that.
I know that my grandparents did not grow up in the most orthodox environment, but I believe for my father, they wanted him to have a more orthodox upbringing, so they did send him to the yeshiva. So that was the thought in him going to the yeshiva, while unfortunately his sisters did not go to orthodox schools, because I don't know how available it was at the time for what they could afford or what they could do. So that was the decision where my father went.
What his decision about going to medical school. There was some kind of issue about going into the army, and it affected his decision. Do you know anything about that? Again, it doesn't have to come from you. I just want to know if you know there was a choice that had to be made about what order to do things and things like that.
No, I'm not
That's
privy on that one.
fine.
Or I forgot it.
No, that's fine. Tell me about, is there anything else that you know about medical school from when he was going through it?
Once again, very competitive. I know that he did well there, and medicine was not for him. He always wanted to be a surgeon. He said he needed to use his hands. He said medicine, too much thought, and he wants to do more action. So, which is basically like my dad. He always likes to do things, make things happen. He's a doer. And also, I know that I believe that there was some sort of agreement that he would go to medical school and then he would do his army time afterwards. And he was stationed in the Sinai after the Six-Day War with giving back the peninsula and the War of Attrition. And you can ask him more about it, but I believe he had to be... my mom was there with me at the time, and they were stationed there, and I think troops were ascending on them, and my mom had to be flown out on helicopter, which I guess I was in a helicopter. I didn't even know when I was a baby. And so my dad was a surgeon in the army, and basically that's where he was stationed. And I guess once he was an officer, once he became a surgeon, they make you officers because he was in charge of the medical facility there. He can speak more to that, but that's really, what I know about that.
Has he talked about his time in the army?
He mentions from time to time that he was he was there. I'm not sure how, well, he spent 3 years there, I believe, but he hasn't really spoken to me much. You bring things out of me, Yishai, good for you. There was a time where, one of the hard parts of my life that I was going through, a girlfriend broke up or something, and I was really despondent about it. I was very upset about it. And I remember him saying to me, this is one of the few times he said this, one of the only times, in fact, the only time I think he's ever said it to me, and I was so upset. He said, I grew up in war, and when I was in the army, there were people dying around me. And, life is very serious, and you should, basically the point was that, I think that I'm upset about something, but the point is that, what I've been through and I've seen in life is really, that's real life, I guess, so.
Did he ever talk about the stuff that, he went through a war?
No.
In the medical
No.
department?
No, and it's my fault, I guess, for not asking him more, but I guess that's what this is for, so you can bring that out of him. But, that's the only time he said he saw people dying around him, Otherwise, he hasn't really spoken about his times in the war and the army and, trauma or tragedy that he's witnessed or seen.
Do you think that have you ever given any thought to why he chose plastic surgery?
I know he likes using his hands, and I know that he feels like a sense of accomplishment, or and there's a creative aspect to it, and it's a feeling of this is something that I perform myself. It's not, there is obviously a science to it, but there's also an art to it. And I believe the combination of art and science really appealed to him.
The reason I asked that question at this moment in time, because it
Yeah.
looks like a jump, is that, let me just see who it was. It was probably Yali,
Mm-hmm.
who said, I don't know for sure, she said, but I always felt that due to what he saw his
In the
time
war.
in the army,
Interesting.
during the war, he
Interesting.
wanted to fix people up, and he saw a lot of damage visually,
Right.
and he wanted to make things look better.
Interesting.
So it was,
Interesting.
again, no, she said he never said it
Mm-hmm.
officially, but she was
Plastic surgery is not just aesthetic. It's also burns is a big part of plastic surgery, and I'm sure there was a lot of burns going on, like a lot of trauma from warfare, from chemicals or whatever weapons, and there was also like deformities is a big part of like cleft palates and all that stuff is a big part of plastic surgery too, which is you see that also. So
Do you remember your growing up in Israel?
no, I was 1 year old when I came here.
You were
One when we came over. In fact, the first time I went back to Israel, I believe, was my year in Israel. So, how old were we? 18, 19 back, 17, 18, whatever it was. So I had been to Israel for 18 years, which
Do me a favor, just tell me that you were 1 year old. When
I was 1 year old when I came. My parents came 1971. I was 1 year old. And the reason why my father came was he finished his studies in medicine, but he needed to do his plastic surgery studies, where I don't know if they had a program even yet. And so he was accepted in the program here in surgery and plastic surgery, and he came straight off the boat, or so to speak, I guess off a plane, but with a baby in tow and a wife. And this I know that we moved to Bayside, Queens. And why do we move to Bayside, Queens, which is an arbitrary place, although I loved it. And my grandfather had two sisters.
Say it again.
My grandfather had two.
Okay.
My grandfather had two sisters who, I guess after the war, emigrated to America, and they started their family, and they ended up in Bayside, Queens. And they said at the time, and they weren't, affiliated. They weren't really affiliated. They were just, practice in name only. And they said, oh, Bayside, Queens has a lot of Jews, a lot of very, Jewish, Orthodox. Well, not Orthodox, because I guess that wasn't the thing. They just thought that all the Jews basically went to Bayside, Queens. But in actuality, there was not a very predominant Orthodox community. So it was interesting how, one person's view like that, which is what brought my parents to Bayside, Queens, eventually made them leave from Bayside, Queens, because Iris and I grew up, and there was just not a lot of children, shall we say, our age, and in our environment that we would, grow up and be with. So they decided to move elsewhere, and that was the choice that made them move. But that's how we ended up in Bayside, Queens.
Hold on 1 second.
I love that story. I'd love to get a tighter version of that story. Just like
Fair enough.
Okay.
With what point do you want to bring out?
Just like you moved there. 'cause
Why you moved to Bayside?
Why do we move to
they thought there
Bayside?
were a lot of
Okay.
Jewish community.
Got it.
Why
They
you moved to
moved out.
Bayside and why you moved out of Bayside?
Okay. So,
Wait, look at me.
okay, I'm just.
You can get it together.
Yeah.
Not in a hurry.
The only thing is that you're advancing 11 years later, obviously, why we moved in and why we moved out. And there's a lot in between there, right? So, cool.
We're gonna get back to it.
Okay, cool. So, my dad had two aunts who lived in Bayside, Queens. They emigrated after the war there, and they were both survivors. And they lived there, and they were very happy there. So they said that all the Jews, it's a vibrant Jewish community in Bayside, Queens. My parents, coming from Israel, fresh behind the ears, like they didn't know anything, said, okay, and they got a place and in Bayside, Queens, and we lived there for 11 years. And it ends up being that it wasn't the most vibrant Jewish community. And after a certain amount of time, where they saw that we were lacking for friends and whatnot, my parents decided to move into a more populated Jewish community that they thought we would enjoy and have a lot more friends.
Thank you.
Let's go back to your life in Bayside. So what was going on in your dad's life at the time? What was he doing?
So basically when we got there, my dad was doing residency, and my dad was really good as a resident from what I can tell, or from, stories I hear and stuff like that from colleagues. And he just did his job, did it well, and always had a lot of free time afterwards, So those formative years, I guess, when I was growing up, I remember spending, like, my father doing things with me and my mom, like, we did stuff. I remember that, as opposed to when my dad started practice. Once he was practicing, then I didn't see him all that much. So that's interesting. And but I remember, like, listen, we didn't have a lot of money back then, so I remember the food was kosher at Einstein, so we would go to the Einstein cafeteria once or twice a week and have dinner there. My mom would take me, and we'd meet my dad there, and we would see also very funny, we'd see other doctors bringing their family in, who now I became friends with their children, like the Feiners were there, who else was there? Freilich was there. Freilich was a resident there at the time, and just other families that we see later on. Siklik was another family that my dad, was in Einstein with at the time. So, and they grew up in our communities later on together. So it's nice that we developed a rapport with their children. So what did I do? What did I do? What do I remember growing up? I remember my father being a resident. I remember him working hard, but always, like, doing things with us. I remember him taking me to places when I was a child. He would take me to the Luna Park. He would take me to the airport. I remember that was a big thing, I guess, not only for shidduch dates, but for take your little kid to do something with them. We saw the airplanes landing. We would go to botanical gardens. The lovely part about Bayside is it's centrally located. It's great. Bayside is, like, next to the bridges, next to the Bronx, it's part of Queens. It's next to, the city. I love Bayside. So, because I grew up there, I guess. So I remember, like, doing a lot of things with my family growing up, and this was before Iris came into the picture. And I had my mom's sister, who also, my mom's sister just got married a couple of years later after we moved to Bayside, and he needed to do some education. I think he came to school here. So he was an engineer, rather. He needed to go to school, so he came to America for a few years. So my mom's sister and her husband, my uncle and aunt, also moved into Bayside. They bought a house for themselves also. There were these, like, semi-attached quarter houses. I don't know if you know them. They were not big. They weren't small. They were just right. Goldilocks would have loved it. So they also came, like, 3 years later, and they bought a place. And they had a daughter at the time, my cousin. So we kind of grew up very close with them. So that was a nice memory I have, like, always growing up with them. And we would always have Shabbos meals together, Friday night, Saturday, Friday night once there, Saturday lunch by us, and it was great. And we grew up very close, and those are nice memories I have.
Let's go back a little bit in time, chronologically. What do you know about how your dad met your mom?
So it's funny that you asked that question, because I always thought that the shadchan who put my mother and father together, my uncle, just met my father in Midrashiyah, in the high school, or the. Also important to realize, back then there was no high school, college, medical school. College and med school were all combined. So it was high school, which was really yeshiva, and which was dormitory, they dormed, and then they went straight to, like, college/career. So there was no, like, differentiation of fine times. So my dad basically I always thought met my uncle in Midrashia, Eliezer, but he actually knew him since he was 5 years old, and that just came out, that just surfaced from all this, from putting this film together. So my dad and Eliezer knew each other since they were 5 years old. So Eliezer met this girl, and this girl who happened to be from Germany. Her parents were survivors, and they stayed there after the war. And they were friends, Eliezer and my dad. And Eliezer was dating this girl, and he was marrying her. He was going to marry her. And Eliezer insisted that my dad, because they were buddies, get set up with with Eliezer's fiance's sister. He insisted. So my dad said, okay, whatever, I'll take the date, we'll see, So my understanding, and you'll clarify this, is that they went out on the date, and it wasn't for my father. It wasn't for my father, but Eliezer was persistent. Eliezer was a persistent guy. He was very persistent. He loved my father, and he said, this girl is for you, and you're going to go out with her again. And he did not take no for an answer, and I think they went out again. And I guess it took off, and Baruch Hashem, and thank God, that was my mom. So they got married, and the rest is history there. Unfortunately, Eliezer passed away about 25 years ago from lung cancer, and he's still missed today in our family. He's a good man. Good man.
What do you know about, your dad picked up to come over to America and leave his life in Israel. How did that, do you have any idea how your mom felt about that at the time?
Okay. So my parents came to America. I don't think it really had that much of a burden on my mom because she always traveled a lot. She was in Germany after the war. She went to a dormitory in England for high school or for a year or two. Then she came back to Germany, and then she was looking for, mates or whatever, however you want to call it, shadchans, for shidduchs purposes. And I guess my grandparents, my mom's parents, always wanted them to be with somebody who's more situated, not like someone in Germany with all this, not with real roots. There were no real roots back at the time because of everything going on with the war and everybody. So she thought in Israel, I guess there were more stable people or more stable situations where more potential mates in Israel. So I guess my grandparents were pushing, I don't know, pushing is the right word, but they were encouraging my mom to date people who were, more stability. And after Eliezer set my mom up and with my dad, my mom came to Israel, and that was always part of the plan. And I don't think that was such a big deal for her because they knew that they weren't in Germany for the long haul. Although my grandparents lived in Germany for many, many years after the war. In fact, they made Aliyah only 10, 15 years before they passed. So they were in Germany for a long time. And anyway, so my mom came to Israel after they married. I guess they dated, whatever, they married. And there was also a time where my mom lived in Canada. We had an aunt and uncle in Canada. She lived there. But then I guess that was before she met my dad. And then she met my dad, and they moved to Israel. And fun fact, my grandparents were on the wealthier side. My mom's parents, they after the war, the government offered reparations to all the survivors. So that's why my grandparents chose to stay in Munich. And which, interestingly enough, there was a contingent of Jews who were survivors who, people always ask, how could people stay? How could people stay? There was a community of survivors who said, the government owes us, and we are going to take what's owed to us, and we're going to start a life here because, they took from us. We have the right to live our own life. So there were a bunch of Jews who decided to stay there and make a life for themselves. And the government gave them huge advantages. They helped them start up businesses. My grandparents rather started a clothing store, which did quite successful. It was pretty successful. So that's what kept them in Germany, so to speak. They knew they were never there for the long haul, but they knew they had a business there that was a thriving business. So they they stayed there. My mom and her sisters worked very hard. They always worked there, but they were very successful, and they did well. So, anyways, when my mom came over to Israel, I guess she had that business spirit in her, and she knew about business and stuff. And at the time, even still today, doctors are not they don't do so great in Israel. It's not an affluent profession. So my mom had it within her. She knew that, okay, my dad will be this plastic surgeon, this surgeon, whatever he wants to do, he'll go to work, but I'm going to support everybody. So my mom was actually going to open up her own beauty parlor, and she got her cosmetology degree, I believe. So my mom, the plan was that she would be the breadwinner, so to speak, and my dad would, be his, do his labor of love, being, and be a physician. So that was the original plan starting out. And then they came to America for my dad to learn his trade, and that's when my mom learned she got her beauty degree, I guess it's called. And the plan was for them to always go back and to, we were going to live that life.
What happened?
I guess my dad realized once my dad finished, he realized what opportunities lay for him in Israel and what opportunities there were in America, and he found it to be much more fruitful and prosperous to stay in the States. And if you ask my dad, which I'm sure you will, he still believes that he's going back to live in Israel. So God bless him. And this is just a transient time of 50 years ago or so, but it's that's their plan, and God bless.
So tell me about his, when he decided to start his own practice.
So I guess after residency and plastic fellowship, they said they're going to hang a shingle up and see how it goes. They made the decision. They saw what opportunities they had here and what opportunities they had in Israel, and they said, we're going to try to make a go of it. So my mom put her beauty school dreams on the side, and she became the manager of the office. And 1976, I believe it was. 1976, they opened the office. And I was 6 years old at the time, 7 years old. And they started working. And, it evolved. It's not the practice today that it was back then. And we can talk about that if you want to talk about it.
So where did he open the office first? And I want to talk about...
Take a water break?
Huh?
Water break?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I thought we got to cut. Okay, cool.
Only have to cut if it's long.
It's all good, baby.
I want to know about, no. Where did you start the practice? And from what I understand, it was pretty quick that you started an expansion.
Okay, so, is okay? Okay, you don't like either. You don't like okay. My parents started in 1976 to practice. Now, I mentioned before that my uncle and aunt came and lived with us. They bought a house in like around the block from us. And they were there for a few years while my uncle was in engineering school. So after my uncle finished engineering school, they went back to Israel. So my parents bought that house from them. And that house was on Bell Boulevard, which was a main boulevard, as opposed to my parents. We were on 216th Street, which was a block over, but still, that was a quieter block. So they thought that location would be a better thoroughfare to open up an office, which they did. So they bought the house from them, and then they converted it into an office. So that became the office, and which is still the main hub office today, which is pretty amazing. It's, how one thing leads to another. So they started there.
Hold on.
We haven't started over.
Yeah, just give us the beginning of that one more time. The
Starting from
beginning
where?
Of
My uncle?
your uncle, yeah.
Okay. So you never know when you're going to get a golden nugget, right? So my uncle's, the plan for my uncle and my aunt was that he was going to do graduate school here in engineering, and when that was completed, he would get his degree, he would go back to live in Israel. And that's what they did, and they had bought a house, which my parents felt that it was a good location for them to open up their office. So they bought the house for my uncle and aunt, and they converted that into their office, which is still their office today.
Okay, good. Matt, you good with that?
That's good. Where is that located?
On Bell Boulevard.
On,
Bell Boulevard, which is the main boulevard of Bayside, Queens.
great, thank you.
Anytime.
Talk about the various locations that came soon after.
So my dad's really good at his job, and everything grew from there. And the timing was right, and he was very skilled, and he just got a good name. And we can talk about that later, how, professionally, how well, accredited he is. So I guess his business just grew, like word of mouth grew, people wanted to, whatever, be a patient or wanted to go to his practice. So everything grew. He worked hard. He hustled they worked hard very much. They worked very hard. They would always come home late. I remember that, which was cool for me because I always got to watch my TV shows late at night, so I didn't mind that. And anyway, so, they worked hard, and the practice grew. And in their heyday, they just kept on going. My parents, their work ethic is amazing. It's really an amazing work ethic. Like how they decided to, my father once told me a story. He said, if there is, the way I look at it, if there is a pie on the table and I can eat from the pie, why shouldn't I eat from the pie? If I have the capability to eat from it, let me take a piece of the pie. So what does that mean? That means that, let's see if I remember this. Monday night was Brooklyn. Tuesday night was New Jersey. Wednesday night was the city. Thursday night was Queens. Sunday was Long Island. So that's what it means. Every night or every day that there was an opportunity, they had office hours in a different location. Some of those offices they owned, some of them they rented. But what does it mean? It meant that if there was an opportunity for them to expand or them to grow, they would take advantage of it. Because if they didn't, they felt like they were losing, so to speak, which is a really... some people could say maybe it's not like the way to live life, but to me it showed that, if you have opportunities, you take advantage of them, and, nothing's guaranteed in life, but at least this is, you're giving yourself the best odds of success.
Where in this timeline did they move from Bayside now to Lawrence?
So when I was,
I wasn't catching it.
Scratching yourself now.
Yeah. So you just need the pause, basically. That's the important part. Got it. So I'll do so with the pause. Okay.
with pause is okay.
So with pause is cool. See, that's a good compromise, right?
Yep.
So after my sister was born, and I'll tell you how this is what my mom says. My cousin, I mentioned my mom had a sister.
Let's go back.
Okay.
Take it again.
Okay.
Well, just pick what you want to talk about.
All right, cool,
Do
cool.
one thing
No, one thing, it's all working. It's all, the wheels are turning up here. I got it. With my uncle and aunt who moved in, that we were very close with, they had a daughter, as I mentioned, my cousin. And my mom was so enthralled with this baby girl that she decided she wanted a girl. And I guess God was listening to her, so they went for it and they got a girl. So my sister was born. So after...
Wait 1 second.
So
Ryan,
wire?
there's like a wire coming out of
Yeah,
this?
it's Ryan. We'll fix it.
I'm moving too much?
No, just have it. That's fine.
Oh, that one? Oh, my wire.
Thanks, Peter. No.
You're caught on the chair. We'll take that from under the chair, so you'll be free after that.
Yeah, that was
You good?
Yeah, let me just.
Okay, so. one second, we're still fixing.
Thank you.
Good? Yeah. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my sister Iris was born, and at the time, I was going to YCQ, which was not right around the block. It was a good 20, 25-minute travel at the time. There used to be Heller Hebrew Academy, which was very close by. Fun fact, Cheryl Meskin was my kindergarten teacher. And Debbie Meskin, she would bring Debbie in to class. Like Rachel and me would be in class together, and she would bring Debbie in. And there were pictures. Cheryl brings us pictures of like Debbie sitting on the side with me and like Rachel playing. It's just funny, so funny. Anyways, so Heller Hebrew Academy was around, and we were going there, and I was in nursery at the time, and then they merged with YCQ, so I was 6 years old, so that would make it right when my dad opened up the practice that I was traveling to YCQ, which was like kindergarten, first grade. And I went there, we stayed there for 5 more years. My sister was born, she was a baby, but I guess when she was like getting older and I was getting older, and they realized that there was not, we were both traveling a lot to go to yeshiva. There was not a lot of Orthodox children in the neighborhood for us to hang with and or other families to be with. So they decided that they would move to a community where there are more children our age to be with and to grow up with. They started at Great Neck, and they were looking at houses, and it fell through. And then somebody mentioned to my parents, what about the Five Towns, and which is people that you'll be speaking to, the Reeses. And the Reeses brought my parents into the Five Towns, and then they started looking into the Five Towns, into Lawrence, and that's the rest, as they say, is history. We can speak about that, but that's how they decided to at the time. I was in fifth grade at the time, which would make me 11, and that's when we moved. And since I already had those formative years of Bayside, I was pretty bummed about it. I loved Bayside, but I did understand the need or the necessity to move to a more, populated area where we have, more children or people for us to be friends with and grow up with. So.
Go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry, I sound like a broken record.
What should I say again?
Story, but we need a shorter version of it.
Of what part?
Why they moved to the Five Towns.
Okay, that's
We
easy.
just need a really concise, with no
I can make it one sentence.
one sentence,
Yeah.
2 sentences would be wonderful.
So my parents decided to move to the Five Towns because they felt that there should be more children for us to grow up with and have more friends, because there weren't many friends for us in Bayside.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Good.
I like the
and-
first version
No,
better.
we have the first
Well, we
one.
have both.
I know, I'm teasing,
We
it's a-
just have a really concise,
Yeah.
We have it.
The reason why I say that is because I loved Bayside. I feel bad mouthing Bayside. I just have such.
Well, you can say it
Good
again.
memories.
You love Bayside.
Yeah, I
I'm
do.
sorry,
I loved
Bayside.
Bayside. I love.
Just say that to Yishai. Tell Yishai
Yeah.
that in a sentence.
I love Bayside.
No, you can tell me that you love living in Bayside.
No, I really, because also the people, they may not have been my age, but in the synagogue and everything, the people that I made relationships, even with the adults, or people I remember, my father would like this. There was one person who always was very friendly with me, maybe a little too friendly with me. He's called the Airplane Man. He would always make me airplanes and everything, and he would always play with me, and I have nice memories of them growing up. The Casses I remember from Bayside. Other things, okay.
Just tell
Give me
Yishai.
one
Yeah.
sentence about how much you like Bayside. You like living there.
So I really enjoyed growing up there. There was
No, I need to hear Bayside.
Bayside. So I enjoyed growing up in Bayside. We had the shopping center, which was amazing because I was old enough at the time to just walk the block over and hang out at the shopping center, at the arcade, and go shopping or whatever it was, and buy the comic books. I don't even remember, but it was just a lot of fun. It was just there was a lot of the library was there, the playgrounds were there. I remember the housekeeper and my mom taking me to the playgrounds to play there all the time. It just a lot of fun memories from Bayside.
Good?
Yes.
You want one more?
Yes.
One more, just.
I'm sorry,
of the
Dror.
plan.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
Just one plan, and we can connect all the others, but give me just one. I really loved growing up in Bayside.
I really loved growing up in Bayside. There was the people that I grew up with, whether it was a synagogue or the neighborhood, I developed relationships with, and they were, growing up. You remember your formative years of growing up, and those are the fond memories that I have. My sister didn't have that because she was a child at the time, and we already moved, but for me, I had those memories.
That was nice.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Go Bayside.
Well, we have everything. now.
Yeah, it's cool. You pick and choose what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure I'm gonna get the story of
Mhm.
buying the house in Lawrence from several other
Right.
people. But do you want to give me your
Sure,
version
sure.
of it?
So I remember that my parents looked in Great Neck first, and it's coming. They looked in Great Neck first, and I believe they were very close to buying a house that and I think it fell through, whatever happened. But the houses we looked at in Great Neck were amazing. They were crazy houses. I remember there was one house that was right on the water, and I thought this would be amazing to live there, So then my parents said that Great Neck fell through, and we're going to go with the Five Towns, with Lawrence. And the house that they moved into Lawrence was an amazing house. It's a great house. It's a crazy house. But it wasn't on the water. And I go, I want the house on the water. And I just wanted to stay in my house in Bayside, to be honest with you. So, but that house in Lawrence ended up being an amazing house. And they got that house. I remember I was there the time that my parents and I saw, like every Sunday would be the day to go look at houses. That's how we did it. And my parents would take me. And I remember when we saw that house for the first time, I went in with my parents to see that house the first time. And I remember my mother saying, I love this house. I want that house. So I guess that was it right back then. I knew. But it wasn't so easy. My parents wanted the house. My dad was just starting out at the time. It might have been a little above their means. So I guess my grandparents helped out. They loaned them some money. And it wasn't even that easy because there was another couple who was interested in the house. And it had to go to auction. It was going to auction. I don't know why they didn't decide one versus the other. Maybe my parents can tell you that, but it was going to go to auction. And my parents ended up going to the auction with these people who they had no idea who they were.
Quiet, Dror says.
Quiet, please. How we doing?
Good.
Okay.
Quiet.
Quiet. Take two. Shut the door, please. Keep on going.
Yeah, let's start again. Just start that story.
So it was going to auction. The house was going to auction, and it went to auction. And I remember coming home from YCQ to my house in Queens, and my dad's parents were there, and I remember my grandfather. You know, you have these memories of times in your life, and I remember my grandfather saying, "They got the house." So I go, "Okay, we're going to Lawrence," you know, and. Ends up being, fun fact, that the people that bid against my parents are the Wises, who are good friends of my parents today, who bought another house in Lawrence, and they became very good friends. So all's well that ends well. So, and my parents, thank God, still live in that house, and that house is amazing. And I have a lot of I love Bayside, but that house, that's the house I grew up with. I spent I went through 6th grade through high school there. I have my oldest friends there today. I proposed to my wife there. That house has more meaning to me than I can ever say.
Tell me about when your father was, I know there was a period of time that he was teaching other residents. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, when he was a fellow, when he was learning plastics, the way it works is it's a hierarchy. So, every year teaches a year under them. So he was always teaching residents then. And even when he started his own practice, in the beginning days, he would work out of the hospital. And when you're in the hospital, you have residents. So he would teach the residents. And
how is he as a teacher? It's a very different skill.
Right. As a teacher, my dad, first of all, you would want him as your teacher because he just knows everything. So that would be a good part of being a teacher. But also, I don't know what kind of level he would hold you up to, so that may not be so easy, I know with me, he had a lot of patience, which worked to my benefit, But I guess I didn't give him a choice with that,
Okay. So tell me about the decision for both you and Iris to go to medical school. Was this something-
good question. Good question.
Was it expected, being the son of a doctor? What was your father's reaction? What was your father's input in having two children decide to go to medical school?
I guess it was the fact that my parents were so successful, and why wouldn't you want to be successful, right? I loved medicine. I enjoyed it. So I didn't mind it, and I still love medicine. But it was a successful lifestyle. It was you were helping people. You were doing things that you enjoyed, technically, hopefully that you enjoyed, and you got to be, and if you were good at it and you would be successful, why wouldn't you do it? It wasn't my father never told me basically I want you to be a doctor, or I think you should be a doctor. He just put it out there, said, this is the way, this is my life, this is what I do. I get to help people, I get to be, I get to support a family and have a lucrative life, and it's great. You know, there's just, why wouldn't you want to do it? And it just was very appealing. I said that would be the right thing about it. It was an appealing asset that just made sense.
What was your father's reaction when you left medicine?
That's a good question. So I wouldn't say it happened over, like, you know, basically like it wasn't like, I'm out, just like that. It wasn't like a pinpoint thing, turn. It wasn't like, I'm done. It was gradual. So I went to Einstein, then I went to residency, and then I made a decision I was gonna do I didn't want to do medicine. I wanted to do some sort of procedural basis, you know, let me say it again. I wanted to do something where I got to use my hands better, you know, use my hands as whether it be a surgeon or whatever the case may be. And I just felt like, you know, OBGYN would be a good path for me. And I just, obviously I didn't give it enough thought because I didn't end up doing it for a long time, but I thought this would be a good road for me to start on. And it didn't work out. And just like, it was nothing per se, like one specific thing happened. I just saw the road and the journey that an OBGYN would need to take in life, and I just felt that it wasn't for me. And I spoke to my dad about it. I told him, and he basically agreed with me. You know, like he said, you're not gonna, you know, there are a lot of just for whatever. When we do the movie about me, I can go further into that. But right now, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't gonna be.
I want to know, was he was supportive of?
Oh, very supportive, very supportive.
Tell me that.
He was basically, in fact, there were times where I didn't know what I wanted to do, and he said, don't push yourself. Do whatever you want. Figure it out, and then decide. Like, even if I had to take time off, he said, then take time off. Like, he was always very supportive. He never pushed me into anything, and he was always very he wanted what was best for me. He always wanted what was best for me.
Can we get 2 opening sentences?
Yeah.
Regarding?
Can you give us like just an intro sense, like my sister and I both went into medical school, just as a sentence.
How about this? My sister and I both went to medical school. My father probably spent over $1 million in our education, and neither of us are practicing medicine the way we thought we would.
That's great, okay. And then can you give each a sentence just says that you didn't, you know, you left medical school, you didn't pursue medicine, that he was very supportive of that. Just a sentence on that.
Well, I'm still involved in medicine, but I don't practice medicine, so,
Or
and
just when you
Just
change
when you
your
stop
path.
practicing medicine.
Right.
Just a sentence
Right.
when you change your path, your
Right.
father was still supportive.
so basically,
Sorry, Ryan, can we,
Ryan, see the light again.
Oh,
let me get a drink.
so let me just take 2 minutes to really.
Take your 2 minutes, Ryan.
2 minutes? Do you want
You
to
wanna
cut?
cut?
Let's cut.
yeah, let's
Ryan,
go.
let's cut.